Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Jana Panarites, author of Scattered, My Year as an Accidental Caregiver. Jana, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks so much for having me.
How did I do in the last name pronunciation?
Pretty good. I would say pretty good.
Okay.
You're an honorary Greek now.
I do my best. Well, I'll tell you what, you ready to dig in on these questions?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I would say accept the reality that you'll have to do many, many drafts before your work is truly finished and ready to be published. And even then, it won't be finished. It will just be done.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
I think if you're hell-bent on going the traditional route, dealing with rejection from traditional publishers is really, really tough. I finally decided to self-publish, which was the best decision I could have made. I hired a company to physically produce the book, and they took over the whole process and also set up a website for me. And it wasn't cheap, but it saved me a lot of headaches. And so it's a path that you can take, and it's worth it.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Sure. So before the book was actually published, I created a website for it. And through the website, I offered the first 30 pages of the book for free as an enticement to get people to buy the book, and also as a way of building up an email list. And you can still do this on my website, by the way. And I do think it helped with sales because you're giving something away for free. You're giving a taste of what the book reads like. And people love getting free things. And so I think it really helped.
Well, and it's almost like you go to the mall, you go to Chickfila, and what do they always have outside, right? They've got people giving free samples to give you a little taste of that chicken. And if you're hooked, you're going to buy a sandwich, right? And this is very similar to that principle where you're giving them a little taste. You give them the first 30 pages, and if they want more information, well, then you have to buy the book.
Exactly. I mean, a book is a big commitment, so give them a little taste first.
Well, and another thing, too, you use this book to also serve as the foundation for your platform, in particular with your podcast. So could you share a little more information with us about how you utilized that book and essentially took some of that content and created your podcast with it?
Oh, sure. Well, actually, during the writing of the book, I was paying attention to news articles that had to do with the subject matter. The book is about caregiving, essentially. And during the writing, I read a lot of news articles about caregiving, but it was largely data-driven. And I was really interested in hearing about the people behind the numbers. And so I thought, wow, I think it would be really important to extend the conversation beyond my book to talk about it in the media, talk about other caregiver stories. So I used the book as a platform to launch the podcast, and I think that having a book really lends credibility to me as a host of the podcast, because you come to the conversation with experience that has been sort of documented in a book. And so I really was excited to use my background in radio production. I had a radio show in college, and I thought this is a perfect way of using the book to expand the conversation in media by creating a podcast. And so it's been really great.
Well, it's a great way to connect in the book with the podcast. And you've had your podcast for, how long have you had the podcast for now?
So I started the podcast in July of 2015. So I actually started the podcast before the book was published. Mm-hmm. And it's a weekly show. And I interview caregivers and folks who work in the field of aging, experts in the field of aging, and I also interview uh, creative types, people like artists, writers, performers who are using media to address major health issues in a creative way and to challenge what we think about aging, widespread assumptions about aging. So it's a weekly show and it's very conversational. As I mentioned before we got on the phone a little bit, I used to work in the entertainment field, and so I think it's really important to have, to be entertaining when you have these kinds of conversations, because it's not all grim. Caregiving isn't all grim. Aging isn't all grim. A lot of us have positive experiences with both. And not to sugarcoat anything here, but I really enjoy talking with people, and it's important to share stories because I think that stories are really what move us.
Exactly. Storytelling, story branding, sharing the journey. I mean, that's the one way that you connect with your listener, you connect with your potential customers. It's all about sharing your story and sharing those anecdotes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, I have lots of favorite books, like a lot of writers, and I'm sure you have lots of favorite books too. So I'm just going to pick one of them, and it's 100 Years of Solitude by the Latin novelist Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And I read this book twice, and it's over 400 pages long, so that tells you something about it. I mean, it's an epic book told in the magic realism style. And the number one thing I learned from it is that words are truly magical, and so is life. So this is absolutely one of my favorite books. And, some people think it's pretentious, but I encourage people to read it. You will just dive into another world and really appreciate the magic of words.
And for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote, Paul, is by Henry David Thoreau, and it is, "Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you've imagined." And I like it because dreams take us out of the realm of the ordinary. And this quote reminds us that life is extraordinary and that we shouldn't waste it. It's also slightly irrational, which appeals to my sense of adventure. So go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you've imagined.
And don't ever ask the question, what if?
Exactly. Just do it.
I totally get that. And Just Do It was actually named my 7th book, so I totally get it. I love that mentality. I love it. Well, Jen, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Oh, the best way that people can reach me is just to go to my website, agewise.com, and that's spelled AGEWYZ, or Z, as my Canadian mother says, agewise.com. And all my info is there.
Well, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks for the work you're doing. This is a terrific show.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.